Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy T for 365 Horror, and this is a horror movie discovery channel. I am just here to put as many horror movies on your watch list as possible. And in today's video, we are going to be looking at 8 brand new releases for you guys to watch and stream today. So let's get into it right now. Now, we are going to get into the video, but before we do, I've got to remind you guys to please like and subscribe if you like this content. Also, this video is best watched with a movie tracker. I like to use Letterboxd. It's just the easiest way to keep track of the movies that you've seen and want to see. I also want to touch on the availability of these titles, as I have personally went to each one of the services and verified that these titles are available. If you're not seeing them, then it's probably one of 2 reasons. The first one, you might be region locked. A lot of these movies, they release in the US and they don't release in Canada for a little bit, so that could be one of the reasons why you are having trouble finding them. And another reason could be if you are using some of the alternative media sites or the free stuff. A lot of these movies just came out yesterday, so they really won't be available on those sites for a couple days. And lastly, this is just a preview. These are not reviews and recommendations. As always, I have included timestamps and chapters in the description, so if you don't like any of the trailer reactions or any of the movies picked, you can always skip to the next one. And if you did want some reviews and recommendations, then I suggest you watch my Every Movie I Watched in a Month series, my You Should Watch series, or any of my movie list series. This here is just a little something for the diehards like me that are always looking for something new to watch. And with that, let's get right into the movies. The first movie we're going to take a look at this week is a comedy horror called Getaway, and this movie is available on Shudder and Prime Video.
They are mostly harmless.
A family's vacation to a remote getaway takes an unexpected turn when they discover the island they're on is inhabited by a serial killer. It is directed by Stefan Harz. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Getaway, this looks like a pretty good hillbilly slasher serial killer horror. Now, even though I didn't really see much in the way of creeps and scares, I did see a gratuitous amount of blood and gore. Now, the story for this one didn't really strike me as unique, but some of the characters and the humor we got from Nick Frost, who both writes and acts in the movie, did have me kind of smirking at times. Now, these are the horror comedies I definitely prefer because we get a lot more smart, witty writing as opposed to ridiculous, zany slapstick. Getaway looks pretty decent, and if I'm in the mood for a horror comedy, I think this one's going to get a regular spot on my watch list.
Can we buy tickets here for the ferry?
Where are you going?
We're going to Salta.
You cannot go there.
We've actually booked a B&B.
Look, hang on. Here, have a look.
Richard,
Shush. All right, let's go.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a straight horror named Kromoleo, and this movie's available on Netflix. Zaya returns from the city to attend her mother's funeral, even though her grandfather, Danang, forbids her. He wants to know the mystery of his father's disappearance and uncover the dark history of his family. It is directed by Angie Ambara. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Kromoleo, this looks like an alright supernatural horror. Now, I did like the fact that the film was trying and attempting to give us some good creeps and scares, almost in that old school horror movie way that I do sometimes miss. Now, as for the gore, we did see some pretty brutal and violent stuff in the trailer, so I am sure that this film is going to give us some gore. Now, even though the trailer wasn't subtitled, so I couldn't get a full feel for the dialogue and what kind of motivation was supposed to be behind it, but I did think it was pretty good in this run-of-the-mill story. Now, Kromoleo didn't look too bad, and with the supernatural elements and everything, I think this one is going to get just a little bit of a lower spot on my watch list. Next movie we're going to take a look at is a comedy horror called The Yorki Werewolf, and this movie is available on VOD Digital.
The Yorki Werewolf is on your tail.
A rebellious teen witch is turned into a tiny werewolf and thrown into the middle of a decades-old war between one small town's creatures of the night and the local mafia. It is directed by Michael DeBaggio or Nales. Okay, so after watching the trailer for the Yorki Werewolf, this looks like a little bit of a meh werewolf horror film. Now, I know the film takes a little bit of a zany path, so I'm not 100% sure we're supposed to take the film serious. And if you are into that kind of zany, ridiculous horror, then there may be something for you here. But for me personally, it just seemed a little bit hokey and ridiculous and didn't really pique my interest. Now, I think just because of the style of this kind of zany horror comedy, that we're really not going to get many creeps and scares. And there was some gore, but I just don't think it was enough for this kind of movie for me. Now again, I know I'm beating a dead horse because I'm pretty sure the movie's supposed to be ridiculous, but even the transformation was pretty meh, and I just didn't really love the werewolf costume. Like, it really just looked like somebody in a furry bear suit. Like, it really just looked like a furry costume. But again, maybe I'm just tending to take this movie a little too seriously. Now, if you're into more of a zany comedy, the Yorki Werewolf might actually be for you, but for me, unless I hear something good, this one's probably gonna get a skip on my watch list.
One little beast will refuse to roll over.
What? Werewolves. Witches.
Check your spells before you wreck yourself.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a crime horror thriller called When It Rains in LA, and this movie is available on VOD Digital.
There is a saying when it rains in LA.
Watch out!
Disaster follows.
Following an Eastern European girl's escape from trauma, she goes on a vacation with friends, where she confronts her unresolved past and the consequences of her relocation. It is directed by David M. Parks. Okay, so after watching the trailer for When It Rains in LA, this looks like a very middle-of-the-road whodunit slasher. Now, I think just by the nature of the film that the creeps and scares are going to be scant, because it is just like a masked slasher horror, so at most I can see some tense situations and escape scenes, and maybe a jump scare or two. As for the gore, we didn't really see much in the trailer, but when it comes to these slasher films, at times it could be hit or miss. As long as the film doesn't have off-screen kills, I think just kind of some brutal stabbings and slashings is the most we're gonna get. Now, the characters in the film did give me a decent Circle of Friends vibe, and the acting and performances seemed passable. The story was really nothing unique, and the premise just seemed very run-of-the-mill. Now, there's nothing really wrong with this film, but nothing really jumped out or spoke to me, so I think When It Rains in LA is just gonna get a regular to a lower spot on my watch list.
It's weird.
What?
The door is open.
Power's out. It's probably the rain.
Alice? Tatya? Okay, enough with the games. Tatya, where have you been?
You called.
I didn't call you.
Now it's time to play some catch up, and the next movie we're going to look at is a straight horror called What Lurks Beneath, and this movie is available on Tubi and Plex. The crew of the USS Titan finds themselves on the brink of World War III with Russia when a naked stowaway appears in one of their torpedo tubes. Captain Banks fears she may be Russian, but she's something far more dangerous. It is directed by Jamie Bailey. Okay, so after watching the trailer for What Lurks Beneath, this looks like a little bit of a meh underwater monster horror. Now, when it comes to the creeps and scares, this is a perfect example of kind of that fear bias that I'm always talking about. Because although I don't see it for the average person, I do have a little bit of thalassophobia, so I did find a little bit of creepy scariness and a tiny bit of anxiety in some of the underwater scenes. Other than that, especially for someone who has no fear of that, I didn't really see that many creeps and scares at all. When it came to the gore in the film, I just didn't see a lot. We do see a little bit of blood in the trailer, but nothing really flowing or dripping, just kind of static, so it was kind of lame and tame in the trailer. Now, the characters for this one did seem okay, but the dialogue just seemed a little bit contrived and wooden, and it did feel indicative of a Tubi movie. Now, the story for this film is the only thing that really intrigued me, even a little bit. Now, especially when we're talking about deepwater horror, these movies always kind of make me feel a little bit uneasy, and I did like the fact that kind of there was a stowaway character, that they're unsure whether or not it's a monster, and the people on the ship kind of are encountering and studying like new life forms. Mixed with the fact that you do get this very claustrophobic submarine feel, I think that there's something here for very niche audiences. Now, if I didn't have a little bit of this kind of fear bias, I do think that this movie would just be like a little bit of a lower priority on my watch list. But for me, I did find some anxiety and did like the things that they were doing in the film, so it is going to get just a regular spot on my watch list.
But you are the only ship with the position to be able to carry out this mission. The President has authorized an alert status of DEFCON 3.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a straight horror named Mudbrick, and this movie is available on VOD Digital. After inheriting an old mud brick house in his home village in Eastern Europe, a man returns after spending his whole life in England, only to find out that inhabitants are hiding a dark secret about the pagan Slavic cult and his own past. It is directed by Nikola Petrovic. So after watching the trailer for Mudbrick, this looks like a decent cult-style horror. Although I don't think this movie is going to contain traditional creeps and scares, it did have some good weird moments that made me feel that we're going to get this like kind of cerebral imagery and weirdness that could translate into some kind of disturbing creepiness. Now, when it comes to the characters in the film, one of the standouts was definitely Andrew Howard, and it looks like he plays a really good kind of tortured role in the film. The story for this one definitely is run-of-the-mill, but again, with some of just the weirdness and imagery we see, we might get something just a little unique out of it. Now, although Mudbrick looked good and weird, it just didn't jump out at me like I wanted to, so it's gonna get a regular to a little bit of a lower spot on my watch list.
I feel like I've been traveling forever. I need rest. Do you enjoy being fit? Feel like respect.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is another straight horror called Forever Mine, and this movie is available on VOD Digital.
No, she couldn't have.
Forever Mine follows Vincent, a sadistic man who marries Erica, intending to make her his victim. But on their wedding night, Erica reveals she's a black widow who has poisoned him, and a deadly game of psychological warfare ensues. It is directed by DC Hamilton. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Forever Mine, I kind of like the premise of this cat and mouse game horror. Now, when it comes to the creeps and scares, I do think that the film's going to be light on them, but even in the trailer, I did see one or two kind of jump scare moments, so it could have a decent intensity. And honestly, the film just didn't show us anything in the way of gore at all. Now, the story for this one might be interesting, where it looks like we do get a pretty good character twist, but just like the movie Abigail, I really wish they would have left that twist for us to discover throughout the film. Now, I did think that the character performances looked pretty good, but I think it's really going to lean heavily on some good kind of smart dialogue in this psychological battle, and I really hope that the film can rise to the occasion and give us something fun. I also thought that the Black Widow character kind of undergoes this transformation, like this kind of creepy doll transformation throughout the trailer, so we could get some weird creepiness out of that. All in all, just because of the acting and production, I wasn't like ravenously excited for Forever Mine, but again, I did think kind of the premise and the twist looked interesting, so I think Forever Mine is just going to get just barely a regular spot on my watch list.
But I still have more to show you.
You do?
Oh, yes.
What is it?
Oh, it's really quiet down here. Ooh, what is this place?
This is where you'll live from now on.
Last movie we're going to take a look at this week is a horror thriller film called The Painted, and this movie is available on VOD Digital. A 1960s suburban family's plans are interrupted when they're called to a deceased relative's estate, where they begin to unravel the secrets that haunt the premises, strange occurrences, archaic rituals, and sinister paintings on the wall. It is directed by Sasha Sibley. Okay, so after watching the trailer for The Painted, this looks like a decent supernatural haunted house horror. Now, the film looks like it has some decent creeps and scares, not only with these kind of creepy ass paintings, but also in the fact that we get some good kind of jump scare intense moments while the paintings like come alive. Now, the characters for this one are played okay, but here and there I did feel like some of the dialogue was a little wooden, but that definitely wasn't the case throughout the entire trailer. Now, literally, I just called this premise run-of-the-mill earlier because what we have is an inherited property that has kind of a dark secret behind it, but with the paintings coming alive and some of the effects, we could get a really creepy, weird vibe. Now, while The Painted looks good and it has like a decently creepy atmosphere, I still think that if they fumble the execution, that the film could end up just being a little bit boring. Now, I do think that The Painted has a good creepy vibe with just some of the effects and some of the stuff in it. I do like the premise of it, so The Painted is going to get a regular spot on my watch list.
It's these paintings. They're just all so creepy.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for another episode of brand new releases for you guys to watch and stream. I do hope that you like this content, and if you did find a couple of gems for your watch list, please leave me a like and subscribe. Now, if I had to make a couple of picks this week, the one that's going to be a little bit of an unconventional pick for me is going to be Get Away. Again, I just thought Nick Frost was good. It did have a good kind of witty feel, and it was one of just the better produced movies of the week. For my next pick, I'm going to kind of make two picks in one because I understand that this one might not be for everybody, but I do think that What Lurks Beneath does look good. Again, because of my bias and fear in deep sea, I do think it looks dark and creepy. The underwater element looks totally creepy. The claustrophobic element of the submarine kind of looks good and kind of made me feel boxed in just from watching it. And then the interaction with this mysterious character that they find in the torpedo tubes, whether it's a mermaid or some sort of monster, and it kind of turning out being nefarious, it did look interesting and just kind of wanted me to kind of give it a watch. Now, the last pick for me this week is probably going to be the creepiest movie, in my opinion, on the list, and that is going to be The Painted. I just thought that it had a good premise and look to it. The paintings were really creepy. I really like some of the effects and how the paint kind of did its own thing, and sometimes it looked like some of the characters would phase between painting styles like realism and pointillism or whatever. I'm not really an expert on like the different styles of, painting techniques right off the top of my head, but I did think the movie had a good creepy look, the way the paintings kind of were coming to life and falling off the wall, and I just feel like that's probably going to be, if anything, the creepiest movie of the week. Well, guys, that's going to do it for me for real this time. I have got to get out of here as I have got a ton of movies to watch. If you made it this far in the video, I want to thank you. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have been taking care of yourselves, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Sometimes when you be wolfing, you eat a bunch of grass to digest the prey, or so I've been told.
I'm still kind of new to it. I'm sorry.